also known as Baby Grace. So if you're a Little House on the Prairie person, you know exactly who I'm talking to. You might not recognize her. Whoops, I guess I should turn my speaker down. There we go. So anyway, I had the opportunity to meet Wendi when I went to a speakers conference in California, and we got put in the same group where we had to get up and give impromptu speeches.
It was very fun. It's terrifying.
Yes. 5 minutes is a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I was fascinated with her story. I have kept in touch with her via Facebook and other email and whatnot since that time. That was like over a year and a half ago almost. And I was fascinated with her story. And at that time that I met you, you were in the middle of finishing up your book, Little House Devotions. And so I got to be able to see you kind of go through that and watch that kind of grow and come into fruition. So it's a fun process. So thank you for joining us today and blessing the audience with your story. And as I'm saying that, let's jump in and give a little background of your story.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. This is super fun. I guess my story is really, it all started when I was 8 months old, and my twin sister and I just got plopped right into Hollywood with no acting, obviously, talent, or it just happened, and we became Baby Grace Ingalls overnight. It was really the grace of God that just gave us this part. And we spent 4 years on the set of Little House on the Prairie. And it really just changed our lives forever. It was such a gift. Little House on the Prairie has changed my life. And God gave me this opportunity, and he's been using it ever since.
Yeah. And so how did that, you're being Baby Grace, so automatically people are going to have this persona of confidence and, she's been on Hollywood. How did that change as you went into a teenager? Like, how did that spotlight affect you?
Well, the funny thing is that people would think that I'm very confident, and that is so far from the truth. When I was young, I was the twin who kind of sat in the shadows, and my sister Brenda is very confident and very driven, and I just never felt like I couldn't measure up, and it really plagued me my whole life. I was constantly comparing myself to her, and I didn't find out till much later that that was just something that I had no business doing.
One thing that you said that I remember you saying this when we were at that conference, is that you guys would do the roles, but you didn't know who was actually going to get in the cut until you watched it. And you shared that a lot of times your sister got put in the cut. Do you remember that? And
yeah, so what it is you never know who's going to get chosen for which role. And they didn't really do scenes over and over and over again, especially with the kids, because it was kind of a waste of time. So they would pick which twin they believed would do the best job in that moment. And most of the time it was the first cut was it. There was no multiple runs like you would think. They save that for the serious actors who are doing something meaningful. So I was very shy and just scared of the camera. And so I didn't get chosen for a lot of those important roles, as they would say. And my sister got a lot of the really important, fun roles. And I got a lot of crying scenes because they wanted the baby to cry.
Isn't that the number one question you get asked?
Oh, yeah. Why is Baby Grace always crying?
Yeah.
And I usually say is most of the time it's me. And it's because I was so scared. And I just brought that through my that scared little girl just like didn't go away when the cameras and the lights were turned off. And I don't know. That's just
That's
my
kind of
kind of
scary.
like lot in life a little bit. And there was an episode, the Christmas episode, and we were so excited. We were about 4 years old. So I actually remember this episode. And it was an episode where we had a lot of scenes. Like we had 4 or 5 different scenes, which is kind of a lot for a kid that small. And they were really fun scenes. And we were kind of arguing over who would get what scene. And of course, we had no control over that. But we got to lick a candy cane, open a present, gather around the open window where Pa was snowshoeing, and then fallen asleep on Ma's lap. And so obviously, who cares about falling asleep on Ma's lap? We wanted to do all the fun stuff. And so we were kind of arguing about it. Well, after it was all said and done, the only thing I got to do was fall asleep. And Brenda got to do every other part. And I just remember thinking, this isn't fair. Like, life is not fair. And I kind of carried that with me through my teenage years and my adult years, just feeling like kind of like forgotten by God a little bit. Like, well, what do I get to do? Like, what have you given me that like I feel proud of and that I'm excited about and that I could actually share with somebody, but I just always felt kind of passed over.
I think I just thought of this, like, it's one thing, I have people I compare myself to, but to have an identical twin, a constant somebody that you compare yourself to that looks similar to yourself, that maybe people think you should be just like her, that if she's good at one thing, you should be good at another. That would be hard to live with a constant comparison.
Yeah, it was really, really difficult, especially when I was a teenager. My sister was just like valedictorian and MVP of every team that she was on. She had a beautiful voice. She sang. I just was like, she married her high school sweetheart. Like, it was just like, it was so hard to feel like I was good at anything, you know, and not to like sob story it, but it was really, really hard. Like, I would say that comparison has been my greatest challenge my whole life.
I think it is I think everyone has a struggle with comparison, but
Yes.
like Marilyn is joining us right now. She's saying she can't imagine what it would be like to have a twin in this kind of a situation. So how did God turn that around in your adulthood? Because that's such a great story.
Well, he didn't quite turn it around until I turned about 38 and I got a brain tumor. And it was 2015. And I was having terrible headaches and mental confusion and dizziness, and find out that I have a brain tumor that needs to be removed like tomorrow. And it was like God was finally giving me a story. And it wasn't like a really great story, but it was like a story. And I actually just embraced it like, okay, God, this is what you want me to do. And he was saying, okay, no more of this. Like, this is a story I'm giving you.
Wow.
And so what are you going to do with it? And for the first time, I was ready to like listen and say, okay, God, this is what you want me to do. And I just started hearing these words like, we're not comparing anymore. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to strive to be better or more. You just need to trust me. And that was just the beginning of me really coming into my own purpose and my own calling for the first time in my whole life, feeling like I know what I'm supposed to do now. Like, I know why I was put on this planet.
Wow.
And it was to take this terrible thing that's happened to me and turn it into good, and turn it into a place where I can bring hope and I can bring laughter because sometimes you just have to laugh at the things that God puts in front of you and go, all right, what are you going to do with it? Like, how are you going to make lemonade out of this?
Oh, wow.
You know? So, yeah, I say that it was possibly the best thing that ever happened to me. And if I had to go back and do it again, I would probably do it again, because I've never been closer to God. And when you're close to God,
Yeah.
he just speaks so clearly, and he speaks so what you need to hear.
Yeah.
And then it propels you into what you were made to do.
I like that. It propels you. And you had said when we talked earlier that, that you had told God, like, you're ready now to face what he wants you to do, and that you were going to stop being that scared little girl, and that, this was an assignment now of all yours, not your sister's. And so how did that then propel you into what you're doing and into the ministry and into roles of Little House that you now have that your sister does not have?
It's so interesting. It was a couple months after my surgery, and my sister and I are walking on a beach. I had just had my first follow-up MRI. And so this was like really big, like, okay, did we get it all? And that was like, whatever. And we're walking on the beach after that appointment, and I had been thinking about it for a while. And I just said, Bren, I just have to ask you something. Like, I'm really like, I think I want to write a book based on Little House on the Prairie. And I had to like ask her permission, because it's not just me, like, she's baby Grace too. And so I felt like I needed her permission. And I told her what I was thinking, and she said, Wendi, you know what? Go for it. It can totally be your thing. And she gave me like full permission to just embrace baby Grace as me. And I just felt like I had been giving so much grace. Like, I just didn't feel like that name was not a mistake. I mean, I know that baby Grace was a real person that lived, but why was it that we were given the role of baby Grace? And then just seeing his grace just all over the place was just so, I really felt like, oh my goodness, I could be baby Grace so authentically because I've experienced it, And since then, there have been so many opportunities, and a lot of the opportunities Brenda has either passed on or not had. They haven't been given to her. And so that doesn't mean that she never comes and goes to events or anything, but God has really just given me a place among the Little House family and the Little House atmosphere of events and audiences and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It's just been really, I can't even explain it. Yeah. It's so cool. So
I loved the full circle story of, like, when you told me about not getting that, the scene in the Christmas part, and in our short-sightedness, we just don't have the big scope picture of God's overall plan. And, a lot of the Bible verse at the core of my ministry is Ephesians 2:10. And it's, God has he prepared the plan ahead of time. And he knew your walk ahead of time, but he also knew that you would be faithful, with the gift and the story and the trials that he gave you, to continue on spreading his word and his message. And I just loved that part of your story. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think it's interesting because way back when he God was like, this is what I want you to do. You guys are going to be these little girls on television for some reason, and I'm going to work through it. And then, like you said, it like comes full circle. And now, like, I can't believe that. I mean, I didn't ever really think that I would have a ministry, but really, I didn't think that my ministry would be little house fans, and like that I get to be this voice of truth and grace and hope to little house fans is amazing. And somebody, long time ago, somebody said, they asked, I was asking something about if I have like an audience, if I have a platform. And I said, well, does little house fans count? And they were like, no, that's not really an audience. And I was like, kind of like, well, I kind of disagree. But there are so many little house fans. Like, God has given me a voice among this huge group of people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people that, and some people don't even know me yet. People are like, who's Wendi? And then somebody's like, baby Grace, don't you know Wendi Lilly? And I'm like, well, so the audience is way bigger than it needs to be. And I just think, wow, like I'm just humbled that God would even give me like the opportunity to even have an influence over this group, no matter how small it is. I think sometimes we think that like, well, I'm not really called to that many people. It's like, sometimes I have to say, like, it doesn't matter if there's one person that is encouraged by something that I say, it is all worth it. Like, I think Satan kind of does that to us. Like, well, you might be doing this, but it's not really reaching that many people. So you're kind of wasting your time or wasting your breath. And I just have to remind myself again and again, like, I'm not like the most well-known Little House cast member for sure. But even the smallest, youngest member of the cast has such a huge influence over people that need to hear that message that only you have, so.
Amen. And not just the Little House followers, but the cast themselves.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I last spring I was in Missouri, and I was there with the cast for the Cherry Blossom Festival, and I was speaking at a Sunday morning service, and I didn't really realize that all of the cast would be in the audience when I was planning this. And it was the first time that they had actually heard my story, like my story of comparison, my story of not feeling like God could use me. And then talking about my brain tumor and how I just learned that like God was just, he's made all of us to just like fly. Like, I have this story about being a kite, and just like God made me to be a kite. And so like, I just need to be what God created me to be. And after the service was over, I obviously got a hug from each one of them and just said, oh my goodness, that was so amazing. I never knew that about you, blah, blah, blah. It was so inspiring. And I realized, like, in that moment that I'm thinking my audience is Little House fans, and I have no idea of this other group of people that I would influence in maybe a little bit of an indirect way, but they would see something that they didn't expect from someone that has never opened up ever before. And all of a sudden I realized that, wow, like I could actually have an influence over the Little House on Prairie cast members as well. Yes. And God like takes something that you're doing and he says, oh, but wait, like there's even more people who are going to be affected by what you say. And it doesn't mean that those people are going to just stop in their tracks and give their lives to the Lord in that moment. Like that might not happen, but even just give like this little glimmer of Jesus. And yeah, it's been really, really powerful and really, almost like challenging to say, why do you always think it's in this little box, because it's not always in this little box. Like God just knows how to bust apart the boxes, and just reach people that we never thought that we would reach.
Like
So.
that God busts open the boxes. that not only we put ourselves in, but we put him in too. We just can't comprehend the vast, of his message and the vastness of the people, and our brains just can't comprehend that. And so, but you're the little one that cried, but now you're the voice among the cast, the voice that is of Christ, and that just is so awesome. So Wendi and I were talking a little bit before we got on the live, and as everyone knows, that we are in the middle of the outbreak, the Corona outbreak. You're a speaker, and so some of your events have been canceled. And you were supposed to speak. Was it this last weekend or this coming weekend?
Last Saturday.
Yeah. And I love the topic that you were going to be talking on, and I think how amazing that you prepared that topic prior to how relevant it actually is. And so I'd love to give you the opportunity to share your topic with others.
Okay, well, this was a women's conference, spring conference that was going to be held in Atascadero, and it was called Consider the Flowers, and it was based on the verse from Matthew 6:28 that says, "Consider the flowers of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin." And so it was just the passage goes on to talk about worry and anxiety and how we just chew things up until we can't chew anymore. And then we just never stop chewing, And I just shared about just the worries that I have, the fears that I have, and really how when I was little, the fear that started even way back on Little House on the Prairie continued with me. And the thing about fear is that fear, it creates anxiety and worry. And so what do we do with that fear? What do we do with that worry? And so I just try to encourage people with just the faithfulness of God. And when you see God bring you through something, for me, it was my brain tumor and surgery and recovery and all of that. You see the faithfulness of God, and you just can't help but have more faith. And
you mentioned that the faithfulness of God was understanding that he was just walking with you that whole time.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like God's faithfulness is not that he got the whole tumor, or for my friend who's just battling cancer, that's not the faithfulness, is curing the cancer or answering our prayers or whatever it is that your trial that you're going through. But the faithfulness of God is really, he's just walking with us. And that's what makes him faithful, not the rescue, not the delivery, but that God just walks with us no matter what and just says, I've got you. We're going to get through this. And I think for some people right now in this time is they're so worried and so anxious about the future, about their finances, about jobs, about being sick or people that they love who are sick. And it's just lean on the faithfulness of God, because he's going to walk us through. He's going to take us through this whole time, and it's going to be okay. That's what takes the fear away. That's what helps us battle these toxic churnings in our brain that are just terrible. And they just strip us from the joy and the peace that he wants us to have, and that he has promised he will give us if we can be anxious for nothing. So
yeah, I love that. That goes right along with one of the devotions in your book, God Knows What He's Doing. For anyone that has the book, it's devotion number 65. Share a little bit about that one, because I love what Reverend Alden says in that.
Well, this episode is about when Mary goes blind, and Charles is in the church one night and he's praying that God would heal her, that God would do something. And Reverend Alden comes up and he says, God must have chosen Mary for a very special purpose. And in that moment, Charles is probably thinking, yeah, right, whatever. But later, if you keep watching, Mary becomes a teacher for blind children. And it is like she's dreamed her whole life of being a teacher. Even the very first episode, she's talking about wanting to be a teacher. The very first episode of The House of Prairie, Mary is talking about being a teacher. And she becomes a teacher to blind students. And it's like her purpose could not have been fulfilled in the same way if she wasn't blind. And I don't know. It just really goes with your whole mission, your whole purpose in what you do, Sherry, is just helping people find their purpose and embrace that purpose and not try to find somebody else's purpose, but to look at their lives, see what God has done in their lives, and then said, this is exactly what you have crafted me to do. Not my sister or my mom or my best friend, but me.
Right.
And then to just walk boldly in that,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's so many awesome things in this devotional, and it's fun to look back and see, the phrases that the cast members used, and how relevant they are to lessons in life and the scriptures that you put in. It's just such a great book. As we're wrapping it up, we talked yesterday, and we were talking about how you had prepared all the content and had worked on this sermon, and it felt like, now God wasn't going to use it. But you made a comment, and that I really, really, really liked. Do you remember it verbatim? Because I loved it. I want you to say it.
Yeah, so I said that God doesn't waste our words.
Yes.
And so I was gonna share this message, and I just felt like it was Saturday night, and I was like, what? Feels so wrong, And I just had that thing in my mind, like, God doesn't waste your words. Like, he's gonna let you share this in just a different way than what you thought. And so I jumped on Instagram and I just did a 5-minute little mini message and just said, I'm not going to let Satan take this message away. Like, I'm going to share it. And it's not the way that I thought it was going to be. And, it's interesting because there's probably more people that have watched it than would have if they were at the event. And so obviously it was a little bit easier because it was only 5 minutes. It took a little pressure off me. I mean, I still might do the event. We're hoping that we'll be able to reschedule it, but you never know. And you have to also say, okay, God, I don't understand sometimes why certain things happen, but nothing is wasted. Not one single word is wasted. So,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
When you were preparing it, he knew
Mm-hmm.
that it wouldn't be, you wouldn't be giving it in that setting, but you were faithful with it, and you're still faithful with it. And I see this time that we're in right now, even if you aren't a writer or aren't a speaker, what you're doing in this downtime, and in your own walk with Christ, in your own study, in maybe mending relationships, maybe mending some time with God, will be used in a powerful way. And so he's not going to waste what we prepare. We've just got to be faithful and keep preparing our hearts and our minds to what he's going to call us to during this time and after this time. And I have just seen that in you. And I have all of Wendy's information in the thread. I have her website that you could join her newsletter and just read all the great insight to the backside of Little House on the Prairie, which has been intriguing. I have your Facebook information, and you've been going live on there. Is it every day or is it once a week?
Well, the last couple weeks I've been going every day, and doing watching an episode with everybody and writing a Devo for that day. It's not going to go on forever because, wow, it's wrecking me to write a devotional every single day. um, but yeah, so I've been doing that every morning about 9 o'clock California time. Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, I mean, all my events have been canceled, and for the spring, for sure, maybe also this summer.
Yeah.
But I did just get a women's retreat in November in South Dakota, and so, yay, how fun! Really, it's always good to like be looking forward to something, and so that's really, really exciting. And I think I'm just waking up every morning going, okay, God, like, how do you want to use me today?
Absolutely.
And I think you can ask the same thing. All of you out there, you can say, what do you want me to do today? Do you want me to text a friend? Do you want me to write a letter to my grandmother? My grandmother loves to get letters. Maybe it's, hanging out with your kids and talking to your kids, a meaningful conversation. Maybe it is jumping on Instagram and sharing with 100 people. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. And you don't have to be an author or a speaker or a pastor, or there's business leader or all these people doing these webinars and all these things. And it doesn't matter how big or small it is. Like, it's really about just being used by God and saying, God, how do you want to use me today? With just one person, because your voice matters. Your stories matter. And that's like, I'm all about just telling stories, like personal stories that other people can relate to. When I share about something that I've gone through, someone else can say, I've gone through that. And that is a bridge. It's a bridge for the gospel. It's a bridge for hope. It's powerful. So share your stories. Like, sit around the table with your family and talk about the time when whatever happened and what you learned about it. The funny stories, the sad stories, like all of them are so good. So yeah.
That's awesome. And thank you for taking time out of your schedule to share your story with us today. And I just want to thank you and you guys for joining us. We had some great conversation, some people joining us from all over, and just want to thank you guys for taking the time. And stay healthy during this, but share your story. And I look forward to seeing you on more lives on my page if you want to follow and see the people that I interview, awesome people like Wendi. And again, Wendi, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, of course. It was so fun. I loved it.